Thank you, members, for attending this meeting. It's the appointed time. We have a quorum. I thank you all for attending the meeting. Coming very early today. This is the first meeting of the Bills Committee. The first agenda item is election of Deputy Chairman. The clerk has issued a notice informing members that at the deadline of the nomination period for the office of Deputy Chairman, only one valid nomination was received. The nominee is Mr. Jimmy Ng. The nomination was made by Dr. Loy Kwok and seconded by Mr. Shu Ka-fei. Do we need to elect a Deputy Chairman, members? Members consider there is the need to elect a Deputy Chairman. I declare Mr. Jimmy Ng elected as the Deputy Chairman. The second agenda item is meeting with the administration. Would the staff members of the Secretariat please invite representatives of the administration to come inside the conference room? All right. For the registration of same-sex partnerships bill, we have a number of papers for members' reference. They are set out in the agenda, including the LegCo brief issued by the CMAB on 9th of July, CMAB 253-002-022P003. We have also a Legal Service Division report, LS64/2025. We have also a background brief prepared by the LegCo Secretariat, CB brackets 21497/2025 brackets 03. The Senior Assistant Legal Advisor worked overtime and prepared a letter to the administration dated 22nd July 2025. It was made available last night. CB brackets 21497/2025 brackets 02. The administration will provide a written response to this letter in due course. Before we go into the discussion of the bill, let me first ask members if we need to invite public submissions or submissions from deputations and stakeholders on the bill. Let me first say the Court of Final Appeal has made the judgment that the administration has the positive obligation to derive a framework. The suspension period will end on 27th of October this year. Since the matter is quite urgent, should we invite only written submissions from the public? Okay, all right. If members agree, the Secretariat will post a notice on the LegCo website. As per usual, the 18 district councils will be notified. The submissions received will be forwarded to members and the administration. The administration will give a consolidated written response in due course. On policy matters of the bill, we will now discuss the relevant issues. I will now invite the Secretary to brief members on the bill. Members wish to speak? please press the request to speak button. I will first ask members of the Bills Committee to speak. Non-members of the Bills Committee will speak after all members of the Bills Committee have spoken. Mr. Eric Zhang, please. Thank you. Members, thank you, Chair. I would also like to thank the Chair for convening a meeting of the Bills Committee on the bill today. We are trying to implement the positive obligation of the government as declared by the Court of Final Appeal. We are also trying to be accountable and establish an alternative framework for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships. We continue to conform to the law. As the Court of Final Appeal declared, we need to establish an alternative framework through legislation for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships while providing for appropriate rights and obligations attendant on such recognition. We do understand the issue may be controversial, but we have an unwavering commitment. We need to provide recognition of same-sex partnerships to make sure those who have same-sex partnership recognition elsewhere will not have their privacy rights affected in Hong Kong. We do understand some who may be concerned that the monogamous and heterosexual marriage system may be affected with this alternative framework in place. But then, let me reassure you, the Hong Kong Bill of Rights and Basic Law still provide for recognition of heterosexual marriages while trying to seek alternative framework for recognition of same-sex partnerships. These two categories should be distinguished. We have an unwavering commitment to safeguarding traditional marriages. We're trying to seek a consensus here. As the Court of Final Appeal also said, the government has discretion in implementing the positive obligation. We are trying to avoid impacting on Hong Kong's marriage system and cause significant controversies. The framework is mainly about not eliminating the significant difficulties same-sex partners may face with the existing arrangements. We have considered different factors, expectations of the public and expectations of the particular stakeholders in deriving the proposals. We are submitting this bill to fulfill the positive obligation of the government and to uphold rule of law in Hong Kong. We urge members to be pragmatic in scrutinizing the bill to implement the positive obligation of the government under the Hong Kong Bill of Rights. We welcome members' views in enhancing the bill. Today, we have officers from the Bureau as well as the Department of Justice to answer members' questions and address members' concerns. Thank you. All right, I'll now open the floor for a Q&A session. We have a number of members who have pressed the request to speak button, I'll assign a 4-minute time limit. Let me read out the order in which members are going to speak. Mrs. Regina Ip, Mr. Holden Chow, Mr. Jimmy Mr. Kingsley Wang, Mr. Eric Yam, Mr. Xiu Ka-fai, Mr. Tang Fei, Ms. Dixie Lam, Dr. So Cheng-wing. We have Dr. David Lam, who is a non-member. We have also Dr. Lo-Wai Kwok. He is a member of the Bills Committee. As I said, I'll assign a 4-minute time limit. Mrs. Regina Ip, I have 2 questions. First, one of the conditions for registration of same-sex partnerships is the parties have registered a valid same-sex partnership outside Hong Kong. But if they have registered in a consulate in Hong Kong, will that suffice? Because I know that such arrangements are available at certain consulates in Hong Kong for civil unionship or civil partnership. Next, the CFA order has a 2-year suspension period and it will end on 27th of October this year. Once the suspension period is over, if this bill is not passed, then will the order continue to be valid? I would like the DOJ's confirmation on this. At the expiry of suspension period, will the order still be valid? If it will continue to be valid, how can the government fulfill the positive obligation as declared by the Court of Final Appeal order? Thank you. Who is going to answer this question? Secretary. Thank you, Mrs. Regina Ip, for your question. Regarding the legal issue, I will later ask a DOJ representative to answer that question. Mrs. Regina Ip asked about the arrangements for registering civil unionship or civil partnership in consulates in Hong Kong. Our answer is this. We are trying to put in place a framework right now. We can flesh out the arrangements later. I will now ask the DOJ officer to supplement my answers. I don't quite understand what you said. If the bill is passed for civil unionship or civil partnership registered outside Hong Kong, but they are done within consulates in Hong Kong, are they valid in Hong Kong? You need to give us an answer, or maybe you can provide an answer after the meeting if you need some time to clarify this. Yeah, perhaps you can do that after the meeting. DOJ. Mr. Llewellyn Woo. Thank you. I can give a brief response to Mrs. Regina Ip's question on the legal issue. For the CFA order, there is a 2-year suspension period. It will end on 27th of October this year. If the bill proposed by the government is not passed by the Legislative Council, then in principle, the CFA judgment will still be valid because the CFA judgment declared that under Article 14 of the Hong Kong Bill of Rights, there is a positive obligation of the government to establish an alternative framework for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships, to provide for appropriate rights and obligations attendant on such recognition. Even after the end of the suspension period, the CFA declaration is still valid, and the government has a continuous obligation in this regard. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Holden Chow. Chairman, thank you. On behalf of the DAB, I'd like to state our position categorically that we are against this bill. We have to respect the people of different sexual orientation, but I don't think we should disrupt the family values. I don't think we should undermine the monogamous heterosexual marriage system and undermine mores. If this is enacted, we are opening the door to recognizing same-sex marriage, and there will be more. There will be coming, like two fathers in a family, two mothers in a family, and we find this judgment regrettable. I think Legislative has to really do gatekeeping regarding our social mores. When we move on to the clause-by-clause scrutiny, myself and the DAB members may or may not speak on the clauses, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we subscribe to the content of the bill, nor does it mean that we accept the registration of the same-sex partnership bill in its entirety. Thank you. All right, this is by way of a comment from Mr. Holden Chow. Comments from the administration. As we said time and time again during the consultation or during the second reading or here today, the administration's position and principles have been articulated. I must emphasize that this registration system cannot be conflated with the current marriage system. And the registration system is not equivalent to the same-sex marriage being recognized. We have emphasized this time and time again. And I heard what Mr. Chow has to say, and I'm not going to comment on this. Mr. Jiming, Chairman, I understand that the CFA has given the duty to the administration to handle the matter. I do understand that. But with regard to this alternative framework, that we're talking about the hospital visitation, organ transplant, the access to information and application for death certificate, and the claiming of bodies and so on. And I'm thinking aloud here. In absence of this bill, can we allow more flexibility in handling all the issues or scenarios that I talked about? Perhaps the bureaus and the departments can allow these people to register someone to handle these matters. It would be similar to what is proposed here. If I have a same-sex couple being registered, if my health permits, I can go to the Department of Health, the LCSD, the FHD, to register this particular person to handle the cremation of myself. Now, what difference would it make if we were to go down the administrative path? Mr. Zhang? Thank you, Chairman. Thanks very much, Mr. Ng, for the question. I must reiterate that this bill is intended to provide a framework, a legal framework. Now, this is about the legal recognition of the rights. Now, this is very important. The judgment here is to provide non-interference with privacy rights. And we are providing the legal protection, and that's why we have to carry on with this task. The most important thing is to have an alternative framework. Now we're talking about the alternative framework and the appropriate rights and obligations attendant on such recognition, and this is to be done under the law. Now, of course, there are some administrative mechanisms that will be set up under the ordinance, but we are going down the legislative path on the basis of the CFA's judgment. I defer to the DOJ for further supplement. Chairman, thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Ng, for the question. Mr. Ng referred to the angle of handling medical matters. Let me supplement here. Now, for emergency or unexpected situations, if one party to a same-sex couple can make advance direction or authorization to the effect that if anything untoward were to happen to that person, then ideally we should provide this basis by law. If we're merely doing this through the departments or the hospital by administrative means, we can visualize a scenario. Let's say an authorization has been given by a party, but under certain circumstances, we may not be able to handle certain situations like emergency situations or accidents. And there is a need to give assistance medically. Now, even if there is an authorization or directive prepared beforehand, we may not be able to cater for certain scenarios. It would be an ideal for us to go down the legislative path. Mr. Kingsley Wong, Chairman, thank you. Well, our participation in this Bills Committee doesn't mean that we subscribe to the bill. We have to state this clearly. Hong Kong is an open, pluralistic society. We should respect people's sexual orientation, but it doesn't mean to say that it should undermine the monogamous and heterosexual marriage system. We heard a lot of comments from the members of the public, the legal sector, the religious sector. They have articulated their views. Now here, the same-sex partnership bill may not be equivalent to recognition of same-sex marriage, but it's a matter of degree. Effectively, this is a recognition of same-sex marriage. Now, there are a lot of controversies in the legal community, and also there is a lot of objection from the members of the public. And third, this is running counter to the traditional social mores and social customs and religious beliefs. Many religious people have voiced their vehement objection. They respect personal preference, but if this undermines the social mores, they will find this unacceptable. Of course, the administration has to fulfill the CFA's judgment, but there is no consensus there. 3-2, not 4-1, not 5-0. It was decided by 3 against 2, 3 in support, 2 against. So this is not a solid foundation. Now we are representatives of the public opinions, and we're here to legislate. Given the controversies there, I don't think it's appropriate for us to enact the law as it is. I've heard from the legal community that we may be able to use some legal guidance. Now, if the death issues will have to be dealt with, one can always make a will. We should respect people's personal preference, or we can issue some legal guidelines, and we can deal with this in this way. And if there are legal issues, we can loosen up the legislation to cater for the implementation or execution of personal wishes. So we should amend the legislation from the perspective of respecting people's wishes instead of enacting the law in a way that we're conferring upon the same-sex couples the right of the heterosexual couples. Secretary, let me address this briefly. All along, when we formulate this bill, we have told members categorically what the positive obligation on the part of the government is. We have to respect the rule of law, and we do need to act in accordance with the CFA judgment and propose this bill. We must recognize the objective fact that indeed there are diverse views in the community, and we do have the traditional values and people's misgivings. We do appreciate that. So when we draft the bill, on the one hand, we have to scrutinize the CFA judgment. We have to measure up to the CFA judgment. What we have to do to implement the CFA judgment to satisfy the requirements in terms of protection. This is something we have to do. We have to observe the rule of law. At the same time, we appreciate the the misgivings on the part of the community. So we formulate all these mechanisms, the registration, the protection of the basic rights. We have to strike a balance. On the one hand, we offer the protection, while at the same time we try to make this acceptable. Now, we did put in a lot of effort into this bill. We have had regard to a lot of comments. So we like to build as much a consensus as possible. So we hope that the bill will be enacted in a way that would be acceptable to most people. And I hope the members will support and enact the bill. And this is duty on our part to do so. So we must reiterate repeatedly that we should assuage our members' concerns, and I hope that you would accept this bill. And this is the attitude with which we approach this bill. In this bill, we have struck a balance between the CFA's requirements and also the public expectation. And we hope that we can be accommodating and accept this bill and accept this balance that we have struck. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Eric Yim. Thank you, Chair. I would like to give my personal views on the bill now. The government has actively acted on the positive obligation imposed by the Court of Final Appeal. I appreciate how the government is rising up to the challenge, seeing how controversial the issue is. We do have quite a public reaction after the announcement of the bill. We have many places that recognize same-sex partnerships now. And Hong Kong cannot avoid this issue any longer. I do understand the concerns raised by various parties. Hong Kong is still upholding the monogamous and heterosexual marriage system. The proposed arrangements will involve multiple areas and complex issues. I urge the government to conduct extensive consultations to iron out controversies. Some parties are concerned whether some public resources, such as public housing allowances, will be made available to same-sex couples. Some are also concerned whether it will affect estate rights. I think we can have a sensible discussion at the Bills Committee and flesh out the bill for the ultimate consideration of the Council. If the bill is passed, we need to have adequate resources to implement the arrangements, such as the setting up of registry and manpower deployment. I want to ask, how much establishment do you have in planned for the implementation of the arrangements, and how much would that cost? Thank you. Secretary. Mr. Eric Yim is being quite reasonable in expressing his views and describing the circumstances. As Mr. Eric Yim said, there are differing opinions. The government has the obligation to fulfill what is declared by the court. This job is difficult indeed, but we are trying to implement the obligation and keep pace with the times. If the bill is passed, we will start our preparations for implementing the relevant arrangements. As said in the paper, we will set up a registry. We need to deploy staff for registration. The resources will be allocated under the existing mechanism of the government for implementing relevant arrangements. We will exercise prudence in the finances. Once the bill is passed, we will start our preparations. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Shu Ka-fai. Thank you, Chair. Today we are to discuss the registration of same-sex partnerships bill. There are controversies surrounding the issue, and there are very different opinions. We have had people who have been living in Hong Kong note that Hong Kong is quite liberal in accepting same-sex couples. But we have to understand we have a traditional marriage system in Hong Kong as well. We have a CFA order ordering the government to fulfill the positive obligation. So I understand the government is in a difficult position, having to establish an alternative framework for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships. But let me remind you that we have, even though an order in place, it was just one question that was held on appeal, ruling in favor of the appellant, and that was a ratio of 3-2 judges. It shows how controversial the issue is. And let me say this, it does not mean the rights conferred on traditional marriages should be conferred on same-sex partnerships. It's just that we need to establish an alternative framework for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships. Under the Shamji Kit case, we have a CFA order. So there is an obligation on the government to fulfill the part. But as LegCo members, we are representatives of the people. We have to convey opinions of the people. Do we need to follow the executive's lead in trying to meet the order of the CFA, or can we have a free choice in conveying the views of the people? Mr. Llewellyn Wu, the CFA has not made an order in particular against the government or the Legislative Council to take measures to fulfill the obligation by establishing an alternative framework for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships. The government is submitting this bill to fulfill specifically the positive obligation of the government under Article 14 of the Hong Kong Bill of Rights. We do respect LegCo's rights and obligations to thoroughly consider the bill and make a decision. We expect and believe members will exercise your duties in this regard. Thank you. Mr. Tang Fei, I have 2 questions. The first question echoes that of Mr. Shu Ka-fai's. Since the CFA order does not set out how the government should fulfill the positive obligation, if the council does not pass the bill, what can the administration do? Can you only continuously submit bills? Then wouldn't there be a deadlock essentially between the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature? I want to ask also, what kind of guidelines can be issued to the education sector? Because in civic education and values education, the materials are developed with a monogamous and heterosexual marriage system in mind. We do understand there may be a constitutional and positive obligation for recognizing same-sex partnerships, but it seems that there is somewhat of a conflict here, conflicting with traditional social values. So I think guidelines should be issued to the education sector. Otherwise, the education sector cannot really resolve the tension between the two sides. Thank you. Secretary. For the legal issue, I will ask Mr. Llewellyn Wu to answer that question later. as for whether we will issue guidelines to the education sector in future, I would say this. In our plans, we are right now focusing on striving for the support of the Legislative Council. There's much work to do after the bill is passed. We have to set up the registry, as said earlier. We have to deploy staff to the registry. We need to provide training to them so that we can implement the arrangements. We also need to enhance public awareness on the bill's provisions, on the registration arrangements, for example, and what proof there is available after registration of same-sex partnerships. We will provide guidelines to the relevant bureaus and departments so that they're aware of what is happening, the rights associated with recognition of same-sex partnerships. For frontline officers and departments, it is important for them to know what the provisions entail. Once the bill is passed, we will commence such work. I will now ask Mr. Llewellyn Wu to answer the legal issue question. Thank you. On Mr. Tang Fei's first question, our view is as follows. We do understand the CFA judgment specifically said there is a positive obligation under Article 14 of the Hong Kong Bill of Rights of the government to establish an alternative framework for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships. But the court also said that there is a premise of legally the basic law only recognizes opposite-sex marriages. So this alternative framework, we are clear on this, and the government agrees that the CFA does not say that the government establishing an alternative framework for same-sex partnerships recognition would mean recognition of same-sex marriages. It is just an alternative framework, as said, for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships. To answer the member's question, the CFA did not specify the way in which the government should fulfill the positive obligation or say what the bill's provisions should be specifically, or how the Legislative Council is supposed to handle the government's bill. Thank you. Ms. Nixie Lam. I would like to express my appreciation for the government's ambitions in rising up to the challenges. I respect the government's work and trying to uphold the relevant judgment. But then, as a LegCo member, we need to consider various factors. We need to consider long-term social impact. We need to consider views of various stakeholders. So I can't help but raise concerns about the bill here. I think the bill would have a long-standing impact and an impact on the foundations of society. A traditional marriage definition does not only affect the rights of the parties in the marriage, but also the future generations. We have an ambivalent framework here that is almost akin to a traditional marriage system. It will affect the foundations of society. I want to say I do respect personal preferences, but then we need to consider the long-term considerations as well. We do note under the framework we have legal recognition of same-sex partnerships that is akin to a system recognizing opposite-sex marriages. So in future, we don't know which direction it will take. It may be an extension of this framework in future, that there may be more controversies. So I can't say I support the bill, unfortunately. And I also ask members to understand if the bill is passed, there are long-term impacts on society. We need to be prudent in striking a balance between upholding traditional social values and protecting certain groups. Thank you.
Secretary Zhang, thanks very much, Ms. Nixie Lam, for the comments. Ms. Lam said we have to be careful on this one. That much we entirely agree. That's precisely why we spend such a long time preparing for this bill. That's some reason why we are treading so cautiously on this one. We have to understand the requirements under the CFA judgment, and we have to ascertain the crux of the judgment, and we have to work out how we can satisfy the requirements there. At the same time, we have to strike a balance with other factors. I must stress again that this doesn't mean that this is tantamount to a recognition of same-sex marriage. Now, Mr. Peter Shield talked about the three questions. For question 1 and 2, the court categorically dismissed these two questions. Under the BOR, under the Basic Law, there is no way we can recognize same-sex marriage. So it boils down to question number 2. There is an absence of legal protection so that the privacy rights are interfered with. Now we said flat out that there is no same-sex marriage being recognized, but we are putting in place this legal framework so that the privacy rights will not be interfered with. This is protected under the law, and this is precisely what the situation is. Other than the executive branch, the legislative branch also has the obligation, and the executive and the legislature will have to work together to provide these kind of protection. Obviously, the legislature can exercise its own prerogative to scrutinize the bill before putting this to the vote. we do have our respective roles, but we have done an awful lot of work to strike a balance. On the one hand, we're satisfying the requirements of the CFA judgment, and at the same time, we are trying to address the public sentiments, whether this would lead to recognition of same-sex marriage, or whether this would undermine the traditional marriage system. Now, we have really adopted a cautious approach, and we're trying to build as much a consensus as possible before we put forward this bill. So indeed, the government has been really cautious in our approach, and we are adopting a committed attitude towards this whole issue. Mr. So Chung-wing, or Dr. So Chung-wing, Chairman. The bill touches on the foundation of rule of law and the social and traditional values. So I think we have to strike a balance between the CFA judgment and the traditional values. And I think we have to rise above the for or against dichotomy. The whole SAR does have the obligation to address the CFA judgment. Now, there is opinion survey that shows diverse opinions, and there are diverse views in the legal and religious and community. I don't think we have really built any consensus in any shape or form. So I think all we need to do is to achieve as much a consensus as possible before we can uphold the dignity of the rule of law, and also to maintain a system where we can accommodate diverse interests. I have a couple of questions for the administration. First, in the CFA judgment, is asking the administration to provide an alternative framework to address issues like hospital visitation and the handling of after-death matters. It hasn't actually directed the administration to set up this registration system as such. Second, under the marriage ordinance and Basic Law, Article 37, we have all the provisions there. If this bill is enacted, would this system be amounting to some sort of a recognition of the same-sex marriage? I think we have to uphold the marriage system and guard against it being undermined, and this is terribly important. And according to our information, the government has not given us any details about the implications in terms of public housing and social resources. So will the bill be having a bearing on the distribution of community resources? Or can the government be enacting or amending the bill in a way that we can skirt around the undermining the traditional values? We can dispense with this registration system in the exercise. Dr. So, thank you very much for the comments. Let me address the question first. The DOJ might wish to supplement later. Dr. So mentioned that the CFA is asking us to put in place an alternative framework. And why do we need to have this registration system? Now, the court is suggesting an alternative framework because we don't recognize same-sex marriage, and this is abundantly clear. Now, for these same-sex couples, would there be an alternative framework to be put in place so that they would enjoy the legal recognition of their rights and there will be non-interference of the privacy rights? So that's the crux of the matter, the legal recognition. Now, with this legal recognition, there is no registration system, and there is no way they can achieve this legal recognition of their rights. So administratively, we have to put in place this registration system so that they can register their status, so that they will enjoy the legal recognition. And they can have the protection accorded to them, and their privacy rights will not be interfered with. And that's precisely the reason why we have to go down this route of setting up a registration system. You asked whether this is similar to same-sex marriage being recognized. Nothing can be further from the truth. Well, this will not mean that they will be able to register their marriage at the marriage registry. We must emphasize time and again that, as the court has suggested, this doesn't amount to the traditional marriage. So the way we do it shows that this will not lead to a recognition of same-sex marriage. Or this is not similar to a proper marriage, as we put it. As to the distribution of resources, under this alternative framework, they will be given the right, like the hospital visitation and the handling of after-death arrangements. And these are the rights and obligations conferred upon these same-sex partners. And the rights and obligations will be implemented in accordance with the judgment. I defer to the Solicitor General. Mr. Mui, let me supplement one point in brief. Well, Dr. So referred to amending individual legislation to achieve this purpose instead of setting up this registration system. Now, other than what the Secretary said, I must emphasize that we do it the way we do because in the CFA judgment, it has explained the positive obligation under BLR 14 and also the legal recognition. If we don't have such a legal recognition, now we're not dealing with the recognition of same-sex marriage. We are putting in place this registration system so that the rights can be respected. Like Dr. So said, individual cases. People are appealing against the court's decisions, and they got the judgment handed down in their favor. And they are claiming that the previous rights are interfered with, and that's why the administration suggests that we should put in place this framework instead of amending legislation individually.
Dr. Loy Kwok, thank you. Chair, I have received many people feedback on this bill. They have raised concerns, they have reservations. Hong Kong has a monogamous and heterosexual marriage system. It is a constitutional right to uphold this system. Today we have here an alternative framework for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships. This would conflict with the traditional marriage system. I have not heard the administration saying how there is no conflict, even from their replies earlier. So we do not recognize same-sex marriages, but we recognize same-sex marriages registered outside Hong Kong, or as Mrs. Regina said, registered in consulates in Hong Kong. And with that, you will have legal recognition of same-sex partnerships and appropriate rights and obligations attendant on such recognition. So there will be a loophole. I do not really see the difference between legal recognition of same-sex partnerships and legal recognition of same-sex marriages. LegCo members have the responsibility to carefully scrutinize the bill, but I honestly don't even understand the basic principles of the bill, so I couldn't really give a concrete answer to my friends or those who have given me feedback. So I think with the basic social needs mentioned, even just as a friend, there are some arrangements that can be implemented. It's not about same-sex couples. So say for a singleton elderly, when matters need to be handled, they should be able to ask a friend to handle the matters for them. This is what we should do, implementing such arrangements. Thank you. Secretary, when we talk about legal recognition of same-sex partnerships, it is not equivalent to recognition of same-sex marriages. It's just same-sex partnerships. Perhaps I did not make it clear enough, or maybe I'm just repeating myself here. We do not recognize same-sex marriages. Please rest assured. We have an alternative framework in mind only for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships. So this is what I want to make clear. As for rights available, these arrangements conform to what is said by the court to provide core rights to same-sex couples. Yes, Dr. Low. I have a short follow-up, Chair. I think when you have only verbal recognition, it is very different from having legal recognition. Your explanation earlier does not allay the concerns of my friends, those who have given me feedback. Dr. Simon Lee. Thank you. I believe we can see how controversial the issue is, but we have this discussion with respect to different parties. Same-sex couples have some rights. We say that this is an alternative framework, but when we discuss such issues, we have in mind the rights of same-sex couples and rights of opposite-sex couples. And I think we need to look at the legislative intent of the specific provisions in the Hong Kong Bill of Rights and Basic Law. When the Sham Chi Kid case's judgment was handed down, there was an issue about how under Article 37 of the Basic Law, there is protection of Hong Kong citizens' right in marriage and bearing children. And the CFA has made a decision, and there is a 2-year suspension period. We have to note some points that the court made. There is a period set for the government to fulfill positive obligation because we have the division of work and the respective powers of the executive, of the judiciary, and legislature. And this is an ethics issue. The judiciary itself cannot impose laws on this, which is why we have a bill today. And if we talk about the basic law, when drafting the basic law, in the first draft, the right for marriages and bearing children were already included. At the time of drafting, they never talked about same-sex marriages. At the time, not a single jurisdiction recognized same-sex marriages. Or under Article 19 of the Basic Law, we have only recognition of heterosexual marriages. We did not say that then when drafting the Basic Law. So whether it's same-sex, opposite-sex marriages, partnerships, there is no specific definition. Because here in the Basic Law, we have only the right for marriage and bearing children. It does not say who the parties are. And after the handover, we have been dynamically interpreting Basic Law, and we have a common law system, so we rely on case law for interpretation. This is the background of all these. And LegCo members, carefully considering the bill, actually demonstrate respect for the judiciary. And it is also about the division of work of the executive, judiciary, and legislature. We should not set a target of having to pass the bill to mean that we are upholding the rule of law in Hong Kong. We heard many members expressed concern with this alternative framework. It will impact the traditional marriage system and traditional social values. As Dr. So Chang-Wing and Ms. Nixie Lam said, this is akin to a marriage system. But then when we look at the European Human Rights Court, they did express some concerns. So this is just some background information that I want to tell members. I think these are just comments, but next time you should leave some time for the secretary to respond. Well, these are just comments, Chair. All right, thank you. Secretary, anything to say? It is indeed helpful that we have such information in interpreting the CFA judgment and the basic law. As Dr. Simon Lee said, this is very clear in the judgment as well, because it is said in the judgment. There is still protection for the monogamous and heterosexual marriage system. It does not affect the monogamous and heterosexual marriage system in Hong Kong. This is very clear. All right, Mr. Emmett Wong. Thank you, Chair. After the announcement of the bill and the first and second reading, I have received feedback from the sector, and there are those who agree, there are those who are against. It's the same in society in general. We have the responsibility to carefully consider the bill, but I also think there is a need to uphold traditional social values. We know the background very well. The CFA has asked for the government to establish an alternative framework for legal recognition of same-sex partnerships. I think with laws, it's always dynamic. We can have new laws, we can repeal laws, we can amend laws. I think in particular, my concern is whether with these provisions, what we're doing, and if we do not pass the bill, would that mean that we are not upholding the law? Has the government assessed the impact of this? This is my only question. Thank you. Secretary, let me state the government's stance. We have emphasized time and again the laws of Hong Kong are foundations of society of Hong Kong. We also look to align with international standards. These are foundations of our society. It is about us developing as a metropolis, being aligned with international standards and practices, enhancing international communication. The rule of law is a big part of this, how the law works, and judgments handed down by the court should be respected. as I said time and again, these should be protected and upheld. There may be differing opinions with regard to this judgment. I mean, even in the CFA, it was not a unanimous decision. There were differing opinions as well. But this is part of our judicial system. And the CFA judgment was derived with the power of final adjudication under the Basic Law. If we do not respect the judgment, if we do not comply, it will corrode the rule of law in Hong Kong. It's not just the government who will be seen as not complying with the rule of law, but also the society in general, and it can have a long-standing impact. So we try to uphold the rule of law as much as possible. I'll now ask Mr. Llewellyn Woo to supplement my answers. Thank you.
Mr. Boy? Chairman, I'd like to supplement from the legal point of view and address Mr. Edmund Wong's question. First of all, we put forward this bill, like the Secretary said a moment ago. We respect the CFA judgment. Under BOR 14, we do have the positive obligation to put in place an alternative framework. And that's the reason why we are putting forward this bill for members' consideration. Like we said in answer to our previous questions, we fully understand and respect the fact that LegCo has the authority to scrutinize the bill to see whether the bill is in order. You do have this particular duty. Now we're fulfilling our own respective duties here. While we should respect the CFA judgment, we have to come up with the package to fulfill our obligation, and this is really a respect for the rule of law. And I'm sure that we are all fulfilling our duties under this particular spirit. Ms. Kenneth Leung, Chairman, thank you. Like many members said earlier on, we are discussing this bill, and there have been a lot of discussions in the community out there. And we all agree that this is an exercise in the context of administering or acting in accordance with the law. I think there are some moot points there, and I hope that in our discussions we can articulate our views as much as possible. Now, many members advocated the population policy and promoting marriage. Of course, we would advocate more childbirths. Now, I've got some questions regarding policies. The way we do it is by way of a registration system. Those who have registered a valid same-sex partnership outside will be able to register themselves in Hong Kong. Are you going to be providing a list of countries for this purpose, or do they have to prove themselves that they have lawfully registered a partnership outside, and also revocation. Here the bill provides that if there is a change of the law and the partnership is no longer a valid one, then there would be a revocation. So will the registrar be taking the initiative to issue the revocation order, or do you require the registrant to come up with the proof themselves? Secretary Zhang, thank you very much, Mr. Leung, for the questions. Mr. Leung is focusing his attention on the details of the bill. Indeed, the 2 points made by Mr. Leung are part of the specifics of the bill. Later on, when we scrutinize the bill clause by clause, I would expect members to raise more comments on the specific details to facilitate our work here. If there is need to fine-tune the details, we'll be only delighted to hear what members have to say. There are two specific questions here. I'd like to approach them from the policy formulation point of view first. When we come to the clause-by-clause scrutiny, we can have a more detailed discussion there. First of all, registration of a same-sex partnership outside Hong Kong. Are we going to be providing a table containing all the countries concerned, or do they have to provide the proof themselves? The law has not been enacted. Now, there will be a more specific arrangement upon enactment of the law. We may have a dedicated website providing all the necessary details when one is to front up for registration. They will get to know what jurisdictions would be recognized for the registration. We may provide the details in tabulated form or in some other forms. For the time being, we haven't got any specific ideas. That would definitely facilitate the applicants. I think members may wish to put forward more views during the clause-by-clause scrutiny. As to revocation, if the law is no longer valid in a particular jurisdiction, then it would lapse, and they need to notify us for follow-up action to be taken. Again, during the clause-by-clause, members may wish to make more comments there. Mr. Vincent Cheng. Chairman, thank you. I've been listening in all morning. My fellow party member, Mr. Holden Chow, has already stated the position of the party. We have to uphold the heterosexual marriage system. We have to guard against this undermining the traditional mores. Now, I heard the Secretary say earlier that they are trying to protect the privacy rights. In the electoral brief, it mentions all the rights and obligations, like the hospital visitation, the Department of Health, the hospital authority, and so on, and organ transplant. Mr. Jiming also touched on this point. We understand that they do need to have the basic protection, but do we have to do it by way of legislative means? Now, in hospitals, if you go to the ICU, there are certain requirements that limit the number of people going in, and those below the age of 12 would not be encouraged to go in. Now, there may be wishes on the part of the patient about the visitation, about the handling of the remains and so on. Why do we have to do it under the law? Now, you mentioned that they have to have a registration overseas. Now, for these 10 rights and obligations, how is it that, why is it that you cannot do it administratively? Mr. Tang? Thank you, Chairman. Thanks very much, Mr. Ching, for the questions. I addressed the question first, and Mr. Boy will wish to supplement. Now, we are providing for these rights and obligations in the bill. If we need to do this by law, we'll have to incorporate them into the bill. There are certain issues that can be handled administratively. We would also do this administratively. So it all depends on the kinds of rights and obligations, whether they are covered by the legislative amendments or whether they can be covered by administrative means. With some fine-tuning to the administrative arrangement, we can get this achieved. Mr. Moy? If I may supplement here, we understand where Mr. Ching is coming from. He's saying that we can allow some directives or authorization for the medical matters on the part of a particular person to be handled, or some after-death arrangements can be made. Now, we have to consider that for these important decisions, in particular pertaining to medical issues or some emergency issues, and there may be emergency treatments to be administered to save the lives of an individual. There are some emergency situations where there may not have been any prior authorization or directives. Even with the authorization, would it stand legally? There may be some ambiguities. In Hong Kong, the authorization given in connection with the medical arrangement may not stand under the law. Now, we may have authorization regarding the handling of financial matters, and we do have regard to this. It would be more secure to do this under the law. Dr. Lam, Mrs. Yip, still have yet to speak. I will extend the meeting a little bit. Page 9C, regarding the medical arrangement for the same-sex couples. For those mentally incapacitated people, the same-sex couple can be the guardian and take part in the medical decision. Dr. Lam is asking, how will this right be implemented? I understand that we will be talking about this when we come to the clause-by-clause scrutiny, but I'm just reading out his question in any case. Perhaps we can wait a little bit for this to be addressed. Well, under the law, the registered or the same-sex partner cannot become the guardian, so we have spoken with the relevant bureaus. That's in connection with the handling of medical matters, and there is a need to make such an arrangement there. When we come to the clause-by-clause scrutiny, I will be going into greater detail about it. Mrs. Yip, will be the last speaker, and they'll wrap up the discussion on policies. Thank you. The New People's Party is in support of the bill. We have to respect the rule of law and the CFA judgment. It may be a 3-2 decision, but it's still a majority decision. 4-1, 5-0. It is still a majority decision. We have to abide by this decision. Like Mr. Eric Im said, there are 30-odd countries. I checked with DeepSeek. There are 37 countries where they recognize same-sex marriages. We're not in support of same-sex marriage, but in any way. Now, in fact, 9 judges said that same-sex marriage is not consistent with BL 37. Now, also, this will facilitate, would be conducive to the attraction of talents in the financial sector, in the arts and cultural sector. The U.S. The financial minister or some consulates in Hong Kong, they are in the sexual minority. And this would improve the images of Hong Kong. I go along with Mr. Tang Fei that we should educate the schools as to how we should handle this. The 9 judges have already said that same-sex marriages would be inconsistent with the basic law, so this will not undermine the traditional marriage system. And the court has regard to BOR 14 and Article 17 of the ICCPR, when they rule that we do have the positive obligation to implement this. I think we have to explain this. Now, after the judgment, the DOJ has offered some simple explanation on the website. We should do so in layman's terms. Whether this bill is going to be enacted with the CFA judgment, I think we have to explain this to the student population so as to avoid any misunderstanding that the government is in support of same-sex marriages. And the rights conferred are very limited, and the rights and obligations are in the relevant amendment to the enactment, so there is very limited impact on the resources.
We will submit written representations later, the New People's Party. Once we have the bill passed, we have follow-up arrangements. Mr. Shu Ka-fai. Excuse me. Chair, I have a follow-up question. I want to clarify with the government on my previous question whether there can be a free choice on the part of LegCo members. I have not had a consistent answer beforehand. I'm glad that I now have the administration's confirmation. We have 3 questions that were determined by the CFA, and only on one question we have the question ruling in favor of the appellant. Then I do respect the right of some of these stakeholders expressing views, but the public also has views that should be expressed in the council, and we need to strike a balance with that. I hope that the decision we reach in the end will reflect the views of the general public. We have also some provisions on medical arrangements and what happens after death. I do understand members' concerns. Sometimes before we die, we can say what will happen in future. Say if we don't want our family to deal with such matters because we don't have a close relationship, we can always get others to handle the relevant arrangements by writing up a document in advance. Secretary, thank you. I think we can address Mr. Shukafai's questions when we go into clause-by-clause examination. Thank you. If there are no other questions from members, we'll move on to the third agenda item. The next meeting will be held on this Friday in the morning.